Good afternoon, good evening students, I hope you're doing good. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're back with another lecture concerning literature for third year students. As you can see, it will be about naturalism. Of course, naturalism as a literary movement. We've already seen realism and romanticism. If you're looking for those videos, you can find them on this channel. Of course, all you have to do is go on the playlist and you'll find them organized. Now, before I start with naturalism, I invite you, as usual, to like the Facebook page of this channel in order to be notified whenever I post something new, and also subscribe to my channel in order to be notified, of course, and that would encourage me to do more and also help you out during the period of exam. Now, we move to the outline of our lecture. We will start with naturalism as a movement. We will define naturalism. We are going to give some information about naturalism. Then we are going to talk about the characteristics of naturalism. I personally picked 7 characteristics, and I think that they are more than enough. But if you want to satisfy your curiosity, you can also find other information, of course. Then after that, we are going to talk about the difference between naturalism and realism. We are going to compare them, because they mostly look the same, but there is a specific difference between the two. Then, at the end, we are going to round off with 3 writers of that movement. We're going to talk about some of their works, and also maybe if you want to search for those works or to read those books of that movement, that would be recommended, of course. Now, without any further ado, we shall start with naturalism. As a definition, we can say that it is a literary genre that started as a movement in the late 19th century, of course, in literature, film, theater, and art in general. It is sometimes, or most of the times, seen as an extreme realism. We are going to know why, because it shows how families, social conditions, and environment affect human character in shaping their personality. You see, naturalistic writers mostly write about how environment determines and governs human characters. You see the word determines? We say naturalism is realism, but with determinism, or with a deterministic point of view. This is the difference between the two, the major difference, but we are going to see the other differences, of course. And of course, in this movement, some scientific works and principles are found within naturalism, or this movement. Like Darwin, for example, Darwin's theory of the survival of the fittest. We are going to talk about it later on. So this is, let's say, a small amount of information. I mean, the basics. Let's say the most important things that you need to know about naturalism as a movement. And of course, we are going to move to the characteristics of this movement. The first one is objectivity, and almost a scientific presentation of a situation. You see, there is no judgment of situations, there is no judgment of characters, there is only recording. They just depict things from reality and they talk about them. This is why it looks like realism, because even realism depicts things from the real life or real situation. But in this case, it is for the readers to form their own conclusions and opinions. So in naturalism, it shows, let's say, the hard life and how people live that kind of life, and also they do not talk about let's say personal opinions, because they opted to a scientific presentation. It's just being objective. This is for a specific purpose, that is, the readers, it is up for the readers to form their own conclusions and opinions in general. The second characteristic that we can mention is the absence of the free will, of course, of the characters. You see, characters do not have choices in controlling their fate or lives. I mean, their lives are usually governed by social, economic, emotional, sometimes hereditary, or most of the times environmental forces. So in the let's say naturalistic works, or according to naturalistic writers, when they write about characters, they do not give them the free will, or they do not show you that these characters have a choice. I mean, everything they do, it is determined by external forces, such as, let's say, social force, economic force, emotional force, hereditary force, and environmental force. So this is about the absence of the free will. And of course, the third characteristic that we can mention is the fact that it looks like Darwin's the survival of the fittest, like I said. We can take this as a characteristic because most of the times, let's say the picture we get from the works of naturalistic writers, it's the fact that life is full of obstacles, and you will find a lot of people that are struggling with life, and of course the strong survive and thrive and they develop and all, and the weak, of course, become victims and disappear metaphorically. Now, the fourth characteristic we get is the human instinct is found widely in the characters. I'll explain. Characters are always struggling, like I said. And they are always, or most of the times, in critical situations, or if you want, desperate situations. So in order to survive, in order to overcome the obstacle, they use their basic human instincts. You see, when you are in trouble, your human instinct tells you to do this and that in order to get away or to survive. So in naturalistic works, or according to naturalistic writers as usual, they introduce this human instinct almost in every character they write about. So this is as far as human instinct is concerned. The fifth characteristic is the fact that life is monotonous, of course, for the characters. You see, why do they use the word monotonous? And by the way, monotonous means it's like to have something every day, it doesn't change. The writers do so in order to show the boring and tedious daily existence of the characters, and also to make life in hard surroundings, to show you that life is not all about sunshine and rainbows. I mean, life is very hard. This is as far as life is concerned. And of course, there is something that is what we call one fatal flaw. So it's generally a major mistake that a character does, and this mistake affects the character's decisions during the whole story. And generally, it leads to some bad consequences, such as troubles in general and sometimes even death. The last characteristic that we can mention is the controlling forces. I mean, these external forces that we talk about in naturalistic works are society and the surrounding environment, family situations, and sometimes hereditary things. So these determine the, let's say, the life of the characters. This is why it is different from realism. Realism says that a decision of a character is their response to a certain situation, but naturalism says that a person's actions are determined by some external factors, which I've already said. It means they oblige them to act in a specific way. Of course, this can be seen again in the last point that we are going to discuss right now. So you have naturalism versus realism. We are going to give three major differences. Naturalism uses scientific techniques to depict human beings objectively. I insist on the word objectively, whereas realism focuses on literary techniques. For realistic point of view, in realism, they use literary techniques. So somehow it is, let's say, a little bit more enhanced. The second difference is naturalism portrays it with a deterministic point of view, while realism depicts things as they appear. So deterministic, it means there is something that determines something else to happen or to act in such a way. in such way, sorry. But for realism, it depicts things as they appear. Do not say that there's something that obliges this to act this way, that way. The last thing that I've already said is the fact that naturalism says that a person's actions are determined by some external factors, obliging them to act in such way. And of course, realism, on the other hand, says that a decision of a character is the response to a certain situation. Now, these are, let's say, we've discussed, so far, naturalism. What is naturalism? What is the definition of naturalism? We've given some information concerning naturalism. We have given characteristics of naturalism, let's say major characteristics, of course. And we talked about the difference between naturalism and realism. Now we are going to move to some of the let's say the writers of that movement. We will start with Émile Zola. Émile Zola is considered to be the big daddy of naturalism, if you want. He's the guy who kick-started the movement in the 1860s in France by attempting to write a new kind of novel. Zola was heavily influenced by Darwin's scientific ideas. Of course, this led to become interested, or this, he became interested in the way that environment shapes people. And some of his works are Thérèse Raquin in 1867 and Nana in 1880. Then we have the second writer is Theodore Dreiser. I do not know if I pronounced the word correctly. Theodore Dreiser gives us a double dose of naturalism, if you want. The American style. Given his tone and subject matter, Dreiser started off his career as a journalist before turning to writing fiction. One of the big themes in his fiction is ambition. His novels often depict characters who come from poor backgrounds who want to escape their poverty and social marginalization. Some of his works, we have Sister Carrie in the 1900s, 1900s, and we have An American Tragedy in 1925. Then we have the last one is Frank Norris. Frank Norris was an American writer from Chicago. He spent some time in Paris as a young man, where he read Émile Zola as well. See, Émile Zola influenced him, as well as Darwin's theories on evolution. Norris was one of the writers who brought naturalism to America. Like other naturalists, of course, he was interested in the way that environment shapes character, specifically within the American context. One of his works, we have McTeague in 1899 and The Octopus, a story of California in 1901. Now guys, this is the end for today's video. If you have any kind of question, feel free to ask them in the comments below, or contact me on the Facebook page of this channel. Otherwise, I tell you, see you in the next video. Peace.